All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shred Radio number 11. Big thanks to folks who have been tuning in so far with us. We've been at this for a couple months now, leading up to our official launch. We are so happy to have folks who have been tuning in. And if you're new, thanks for joining us today. We're so happy you're here in this universe with us. And we are officially preparing to launch Shred Magazine after spending much of 2020 building it out. We are launching in 1 week. So we are starting with a week of online events called Shred Fest. And we're starting off with a dance party. That's right, Shred Fest. So we're starting off with a dance party 1 week from tonight, March 13th. We've got 3 DJs lined up. So excited. Three Chicago-based DJs, actually one based in California. We've also got a mini therapeutic movement and dance workshop that we just solidified today. I cannot wait to move with you all across time and space. We will even have a separate Zoom kind of room. So if you're the kind of person who actually likes to hang out in the kitchen instead of dancing, which is totally me sometimes, we can also do that. We'll be hanging out in the Zoom room with the music in the background. And then on Sunday, we're going to have an interactive Zoom workshop with Jess, steering committee member Jess, on Sunday called Giving Voice. On Monday, we're going to have a super cool political education session about how capitalism emerged. And so there's some pre-reading there. We'll also read together. It's going to be a good taste of the kind of stuff that Shred wants to study with you, stuff about words and symbols and myth and what all that means. We'll have a writing workshop on Tuesday with our great friend H. A Read with Shred panel on Wednesday with Sean Estelle, who we're going to be talking to tomorrow here on Shred Radio at 2 CST at 3 Eastern time, a little afternoon kind of party time there with Sean. Because they have to work in the evening because we're not free yet. Then we'll have a classical trader panel with Patrick and friends on Thursday, talking some shit. And to finish off launch week with a bang, we're going to be bringing back a series that some of you might remember from the before times when we could go to bars and either enjoy or be annoyed by a chaotic free jazz set or two. So we're going to bring back Free Jazz Date Night, this time online, Friday, March 19th. And that means we've got 2 improvised music sets and 2 comedians lined up. And one of those comedians is none other than the fabulous Stephanie Skora. So we're going to be talking with Steph tonight. All of these details can be found on Facebook, and we're going to be posting some more graphics and promo throughout this week as the launch approaches. But for now, I am so excited. I can barely contain myself. Steph is one of those people who just does so much so well that it's kind of hard to even describe all that you are and all that you do. So I'm just going to read your bio real quick because it's a beautiful bio and it made me laugh a lot. Stephanie Skora is a writer, educator, speaker, organizer, and non-profiteer based in Chicago, Illinois. She lives as a femme lesbian, trans woman, and working class anti-Zionist Ashkenazi Jew, and mobilizes her identities to work in solidarity with Palestinians, to queer Jewish spaces, and to fight for justice and liberation for all trans people. Stephanie is currently the Associate Executive Director of Brave Space Alliance, serves as board president for the Midwest Institute for Sexuality and Gender Diversity, and is the author of the Girl I Guess Progressive Voter Guide. And when not working or organizing, Stephanie can be found enjoying the pleasures of life for a Virgo: food, love, and being right. So you are one of the most right people I know.
Thank you. That's very validating for me. I'm gonna that's my Virgo deed of the day. Oh,
yeah, I would trust you with my life. I trust you with my vote. Steph, you and I were kind of just acquaintances for a long time. I feel like we were kind of in the same circles just from being gay and stuff, and also deep in that. Yeah, you know, you run into your fellow queers. And Chicago has a beautiful scene for that. A lot of great places to hang out, and
so many practicing homosexualists in this city.
I know, I miss it. There's probably a lot of closeted homosexualists here in West Virginia. Some out in the open. It's not as safe here for us queers.
I mean, hey, you got Joe Manchin to deal with, so.
Yikes. Yeah, so, and then, you know, I think the first time we really talked at length, it was right before, we were hanging out right before Strip Joker started, and you were representing Brave Space Alliance and Strip Joker, which is a really cute, cool, queer kind of stand-up situation that some of our friends produced. We're doing some fundraising for Brave Space Alliance, and so you were there to kind of rep the org. And I recall just cracking up even in that 10-minute kind of like pre-show, just shooting the shit situation. And I always just find myself being so like learning so much with talking to you and also laughing a ton. And luckily we got to spend a bit more time together before I left Chicago. And really, you've been such an amazing, supportive, like loving presence in my life as the pandemic has marched on. You've helped me deal with some really tough stuff. And I'm just like overwhelmed with love and gratitude for you. I can't believe I get to call you my dear friend and comrade. And I'm so excited to talk to you tonight. So yes, thank you for joining us. I will stop fangirling for a second.
Aw. Well, no, I mean, by all means, please continue. But also, aw, Ruby, love you too. I'm so happy to be here. This is fantastic. I miss you a ton. Chicago misses you a ton. And never would I ever pass up a chance to talk with you.
Oh, Steph. Well, thank you. That means a lot. Here at Shred, we do try to take our nervous systems into account, try to see if we can just bring ourselves a little more comfort or calm when it's possible. If you'd like to join us with this, feel free. If not, don't worry about it. Just do whatever you want to do for a second. But if you want to take a moment and just bring some attention to how you're feeling mentally, physically, and emotionally, sometimes the system just likes to know that you're listening to it, and you can say, hey, system, I hear you. Things are crazy. That's okay. Let's take a breath. If you want to have a sip of water, that's cool. And I just want to thank my nervous system for carrying me through my life, keeping me alive up to this point, and keeping me relatively online despite the wild, wild year we've had. And that doesn't happen outside of connection. So again, I want to make it really clear that, Steph, you've been an amazing anchor and connection for me during the pandemic. Even though we don't share space, we share the digital space. And yeah, that's been definitely, you've been so calming for me.
Thank you. It's my big earth energy. I've got like a shit ton of earth placements, and I'm just like, I will use every single one of them to take care of folks that I care about.
We need it. We're out here. I'm all fire and water. It's like, what do I do with this? I'm gonna float away. I'm gonna burn myself up. Okay. Also, we like Shred to feel like a party when it can, especially when we're catching up with folks that we love and miss. We want it to feel like a celebration. What are you doing to make it feel like a little bit of a party tonight?
Oh gosh, well, I've got this wacky backlighting going on. I am better dressed than Lori Lightfoot, which is me every day. I've got some wild blue lipstick on, and the audience at home won't be able to see this, but for my setup tonight, I've got my laptop perched on top of a box of individually wrapped Twizzlers.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's how I've got some wonderful elevation going on, so everybody can see the beautiful ruby pinto necklace that I am featuring tonight. And yeah, it's great. Love Twizzlers, love you, love Shred. So this is a fantastic convergence of just, and Twizzlers are red, and you know, communism.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Word. Well, I appreciate that. And now I want some Twizzlers. I'm a fan of the pull and peel kind. I don't know if you like those.
The pull and peel have their pros. I generally, if I have to choose a variety of Twizzler, it's gonna be the ones that are just all like packed together in like no individual wrapping, just like the orgy of Twizzlers just all smushed together in the packaging. Because it feels like you can pull and peel from like the Twizzler Rat King, or like or you can just take a giant bite out of the corner of it if you want to. Like it's the anarchism of Twizzlers.
Oh yeah. Wow. See, we're already bridging gaps here. We're building bridges.
We're uniting the left through Twizzlers.
Oh yeah. I love it. You love to hear it. Well, to make this feel like a party on my end, I am wearing my Queers Against Lori Lightfoot shirt yet again because it feels good to be right.
Yes.
And we were right about what Lori Lightfoot had in store for Chicago, and it makes me very angry. I'm not gloating. I'm not saying that I'm happy we were proven right. I hate that. But also, we were right. And so I just want to call attention to that. I'm celebrating that folks like you and a lot of other people that had been watching her for years tried to warn folks. And I know that Chicago politics leaves much to be desired. We're up against a lot of stuff every time an election comes around, but you know, we really did a lot. We made screen printed t-shirts and still
Yes.
here we are. Also, in the name of being gay on the internet, I have my online hard kombucha that has the algorithm
Wow.
successfully marketed to me. I can't drink beer, and this is kind of like a beer. It's very hoppy, so I've been drinking that. Apologies if I start burping audibly.
Hard kombucha really just seems like you say those words and somebody comes out as bisexual.
Yeah, exactly. That's all. It was just permission, you know. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of framing for Shred as we always do here. One of our missions with Shred is to always remind ourselves that we are animals that exist in a dual world. So we have our sensory real-time material experience. We touch things, we smell things, we are out here in the world. And we also have a virtual second world of symbols and meanings. So we use symbols, words, and narratives to describe processes in the world that are not static. So ideologies and movements, political labels, even historical figures and our favorite writers, they are all processes. They are not static things. And so when we set out to communicate about them, we need to remember that what we're actually doing is telling a story using symbols to describe ongoing processes in the world. So if we say X is this or that, what we're doing is we're telling a story. We're trying to find a symbol that can communicate to each other, see if we can make sense of our world, make meaning of our world with shared symbols, and kind of indicate to complex processes. So, Steph, even you and I are processes, and we're going to
Mhm.
be processing together. We're kind of sharing notes, and we come from similar and different contexts and timelines. And the labels we currently use to describe ourselves and our experiences are grounded in history, and they're also in process. They're developing. And so we can look back and either tomorrow or 5 years from now and say, that's where I was. That is not who I am, because I am not one thing. I am a developing process. So that's Shred Spiel. We'll get more into that. Hopefully it's helpful. And anything, Steph, that you would like to say to frame our conversation tonight?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think you really nailed it. I think, we're one of the most beautiful things for me about Shred and about like your work and what you're doing is that you're really grasping at and I think holding very well the threads of organizing and the left that people have really been getting away from lately. You're bringing people together through political education, through conversation, and through unity around our shared experiences and what we need to do to be together against oppression and the oppressor. And I think that's just that's beautiful, and I'm happy to be here with you doing that tonight.
Thank you, Steph. And I'm sure we're going to get into this, but you know, it's just very interesting to note that you are an anarchist, and yet you are most famous for a voting guide.
It
So we're
is
going to talk about that.
it is deeply weird to be like, look, I am like every part of me is like rooted in my Jewish religious anarchist practice, and yet my most significant public work is a series of like how-tos on voting. It's just it's wacky. And I mean, like, in some senses it checks out, because what is anarchism but like a bunch of voting and committee meetings all over again until we're free. um
Uh-oh.
but that's it's really getting at the heart of the system there. But it also, it's so funky. It's so funky to be like deeply immersed in like progressive politics and also just not give a flying fuck about the political system beyond people's ability to engage with it if they want to.
Mm. Well, that's what I love so much about it, and how funny it is, how you make it like people that don't even live in Chicago and can't vote there read your work. It's amazing how engaging it is, how informative. And also, anyway, I'm not going to blow the whole interview up front by gushing about it, but I just wanted to say here at Shred, we are all about pointing out that like a contradiction doesn't necessarily mean we're in conflict. It just means we're dealing with a lot of different things, and we can
Mhm.
deal with a lot of different things. So here we are. I'd love to just start off with getting to know you a little bit. What is your origin story, and how did you come to do what you do and be who you are?
Oh God. Well, on a dark and stormy night, way back in, I don't know, whatever fucking year I was born. I don't remember how old I am. I no, I mean, so I came from a blended uh Jewish religious and Jewish not religious family. First member of the Skora family to be born outside the city limits of Chicago in the last 150 years. And like my family are pogrom Jews. We fled the Pale in Eastern Europe in the 1890s and 1880s, settled in Chicago, founded a synagogue, actually the first synagogue in the city, founded after the Great Chicago Fire, and have been, sort of Jewing up the North Side ever since. I was born in the suburbs because my parents were too poor to live in the city, and for whatever other reason that they wanted to go live in a godforsaken place like Palatine. Not a fun time growing up. Didn't really have a great time there. Went to school, came out, got hot, got politicky. Always really had a mind for politics and elections and organizing, and I really got into it when I was in school through my trans identity, through my lesbian identity, and through rediscovering my Judaism as part of the Palestine Solidarity movement. I really I grew up with a lot of religious influence from my father and my grandfather. And since I was a snotty teenager, I was like, I don't want to do that. And then I went to school, and I sort of got rerouted in my Jewish identity because it started to mean something different to me than just like stuffing things at like an old people temple. And I came back to Judaism through Palestine. I am really strongly and ardently anti-Zionist in my Jewish identity, and I came to anarchism also around the same time through my trans, lesbian, and Jewish identities, really specifically as a part of my Jewish practice. I practice something called Jewish religious anarchism, which is worshiping. It's a form of, I guess the closest thing to it right now is Reconstructionist Judaism, which is what I was partially raised in. And it's a way of incorporating anarchist thought and political praxis into Jewish religion and tradition and culture. So for me, it means that not only am I anti-Zionist, but I'm pro-Palestine, and I'm also specifically anti-Israel, because the idea of ethnic nationhood and ethno-states in particular is really offensive to me, as in a spiritual sense, because we did not, the Jewish people did not survive 5,700 years of torture and brutality and being kicked out of every other country on the planet just to give it all up to live in Diet Europe for 75 years. The existence of Israel as a political project, and the existence of Zionism as the predominant strain of Jewish cultural thought contemporarily is just deeply offensive to me, because it's the antithesis of what Judaism has been throughout its history. And right now it's really mortgaging the deep and beautiful history of world Jewry, but Ashkenazi Jews specifically, to build this like disgusting ethno state on somebody else's land, and destroy the land in the process. I think it's cutting off the nose to spite the face in a big way, and it's opposing that kind of nationalism and that kind of imperialism and apartheid as part of my religious practice as a Jew is really central to my identity. And then, I left school, came to Chicago, got a job at Brave Space Alliance, started writing a voter guide with my friend Ellen, and here I am.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm so happy to hear that journey. I'm so happy that you found yourself, and that you've been like so bold and like just like out doing it. And like, I think you're an amazing model for other folks. I'm not going to tell folks how old you are, but when I found out your age, I was like, you're lying to me. Like your amount of work and just how powerful and brilliant you are. Not that young people aren't brilliant, but I'm just like, it was like cognitive dissonance for me. Anyway.
I identify as 35, and my joke is I'm going to turn 35 every year until I turn 36.
Okay. Yeah. Well, who knows when that'll be, but it's much further than I thought it was. So just I was like, what the hell? Okay. But anyway,
I'm very convincing. I'm very convincing in like my middle-agedness.
You are. You really are. I feel very cared for, and like what you're doing.
And part of it is like, it's part of it is the culture, right? Because I come off as like old and wizened and bitter, and that's just like my cultural legacy. And part of it is that I'm white, and like white people tend to age a bit like paper bags. So like I got it to stop at a good point. Like I learned to moisturize just right before it did significant damage to me. And now I'm in that great aesthetic place where I look older than I actually am because I don't have any melanin. But I also like I'm making it work. Like I'm taking moisturizer and like, you know, pale Judaism, and I'm making it hot.
Well, and also your lipstick game is like unparalleled. Your fashion is amazing. You have like that full sparkly suit. Like you just really are a beautiful presence in the world.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Yeah,
here we are.
My favorite thing that I've ever worn was that full blue sequin suit with palazzo pants. Oh God, I need more. Like as gay duty for tonight, buy more. Like I'm saying the phrase, I need to buy more sequins. Which really like is also rooting me in 1980s faggotry, which I feel like I would have done really well in.
Oh,
1980s
absolutely.
faggotry is like my brand. Lesbian faggotry.
Right, and that traditional lesbian politic that you were noting whenever we checked in, you know what I mean? It's your style really blows me away. And just thinking so much, I just want to take a moment. All the queers out there, imagine the looks that are going to happen when we can finally sweat on each other again. Just take a moment to manifest. Oh man. Okay.
The clothes that we will put on for an hour to wear for 5 minutes and then take them off again are going to be fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow. All right. So on that note, we find ourselves in a strange timeline. What was 2020 like for you?
God, 2020 was actually really weirdly a good year for me. And I feel like, part of that was my work, in that Brave Space Alliance did really fantastically during 2020. And that's because, we had been doing kind of, revolutionary liberation work for a really long time, since 2017, which in nonprofit years is forever. And 2020 was really the year where we got noticed by the community. Everything sort of just came together for us. The pandemic, we were a mutual aid focused organization before the pandemic. And so we were able to pivot to doing community-based and community-rooted mutual aid right away, while everybody else was like, what's this mutual aid thing that I just read about in an infographic on Instagram? Oh gosh, maybe we should do that. And like, these giant organizations started being like, we're doing a mutual aid drive for and we just hit the ground running. And then, the George Floyd rebellion started happening, and our organization was on the front lines politically. People started paying attention to more Black-led organizations, more trans-led organizations, and we really just hit that sweet spot. And having been around Brave Space basically since its founding, it was really gratifying to see the work that Lasaya has put in, and the work that I've put in, and the work that so many other people have put in for the last 4 years really come to fruition in such a big way. And we have we're going to have a 2-story office soon, hopefully. We've got we have a staff of 13 people. We're going to be hiring 3 more. It's fantastic and beyond our wildest dreams when we started 2020 of where we would end up in 2021. And that was just so fantastic after having to scrape and fight and like claw for every last dollar of resources. Now we have the ability to provide security to Black and trans people. And that's just so wonderful. And like in my personal life, I wrote 2 voter guides. I had a lot of really tumultuous change throughout a lot of the year, but it's ended up so wonderfully. I have 2 beautiful relationships. I say that I'm I'm not going to blow the joke that I'm going to use during the comedy set.
Tune in.
But I'm a lesbian, and so like, and I'm a polyamorous lesbian, and I have just 2 of the most amazing people that I've ever met, really in my corners and supporting me and loving me every day through the pandemic and through just everything in my life. And it feels really weird to say I had a good 2020, but I had a really good 2020, and I'm really excited about what 2021 is going to bring.
Well, I'm glad that you had a good 2020. I know it feels strange to say that. I feel like I had a very good and very necessary lot of stuff that happened in 2020 that like it wasn't all pleasant, but it was like I was in like the quarantine was well timed for the work I had to do. And I think it's just amazing, like you were saying, the Brave Space Alliance has been doing the work that needed to be done before the pandemic started, but that suddenly people with money realized was a good idea, or at least beneficial to support publicly. It's a good look suddenly. And so it just, I think it speaks volumes also to like what you and Lasaya and other folks at Brave Space Alliance just have always known and have dedicated yourself to before it was publicly, like people understood what was going on, or that they knew it was important. And it's all deserved. I hope that I'm happy to hear you're hiring people because you work too hard. Yeah. All of us work too hard. I want everybody to not have to work so hard, but you, Lasaya, the folks who have been doing that work on the ground, and we're ready to expand. We needed to expand. I just hope you have all the resources you could ever need. And I hope that we actually win more liberation and win our resources back so that we don't have to have so many nonprofits serving in this role. We should be able to survive and thrive. And it's lovely to have community support and these networks. And also we should not be depending on donations to survive. The money is ours. The resources are ours. Right. And so I love that you are keeping folks alive and you're building power. And it's a beautiful situation. And also I'm really happy that you have more resources on hand. You don't have to keep scrapping so much.
The scrapping is tiring.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Girl, I Guess, which is my favorite. Yes. So Girl, I Guess is a progressive voter guide. And when did the first one come out? It was the Hillary Clinton election, right?
So people think that, so because it's called Girl, I Guess, and that was sort of inspired by the like Girl, I Guess I'm with her thing. But so Ellen and I wrote the first voter guide for the 2018 primary. And God, I wish we had known each other and had written one for 2016, because that would have just been mwah. But we wrote it in 2018 when people were really, the whole flip the house thing was going on. And folks were getting really involved and energized. And we saw this need to do some political education and public education around how to engage. Because that's really what it comes back to for me. Like, even as an anarchist, I'm a big believer, like as a lesbian specifically, in having a well-stocked tool belt. And you got to use every tool in the belt. And, voting will never get us to liberation by itself. And also, I think it's a necessary strategy, right? Where you have this opportunity to choose who your opponents are and to contribute to the political discourse of the oppressor, to decide, like, you get to shape the conditions in which you organize. And I think as organizers, as people who like are working for liberation and justice and transformative system dismantling, it would be negligent of us to pass up the opportunity to affect our organizing conditions in that way. And I'm a big believer in public education. I'm a big believer in political education. And I'm a big believer in, like, if voting is accessible, which is not for everybody, but if I can do something to make the process of voting as easy as possible, once you can actually get yourself at your polling place and into the and into the voting booth, if I can contribute to the ease of the process after you have a ballot, then I'm making voting easier for people. And this was really the ethos of it when Ellen and I started, was we wanted to make voting as an actual process easier for people, so that even if you don't really believe in voting as a political project, or like maybe you really want to vote but it's too much work to figure out who is who, you can engage in the system if you want to, and then hit the streets right afterwards.
Yeah, so important. And there's always this big hubbub of like, can I take my phone into the booth? Can I take materials into the booth? And you can, but they tell you can't. I've been told you can't. And I have to be like, I actually can. And you have to like push back against, and this is me living in Bridgeport for 8 years, where the dailies run every voting center. So they have their people in there being like, no, you vote with your palm card that we gave you, not your cell phone with actual information on it.
And fuck the palm cards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is like, when you hear voter guide, you think of this glossy, like 8.5 by 11 advertisement that the county Democratic Party sends out that has the same crusty white people listed on it every 2 years, and that's what you're supposed to take. Or like maybe a list of names, and that's what that's what a voter guide is a list of names, maybe yes or no on some judges or some referenda, and there's never actually any information there to inform the choice. It's just a list of choices already made for you.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the most transformative parts and most important parts about Girl, I Guess, is the DNA of the guide is like, yeah, there are endorsements in there, and there's a TLDR section, which is a list of names if you just want the list of names. But, you know, Ellen and I work incredibly hard. And now that I'm writing the guide by myself, I work incredibly hard to make sure that every single endorsement is thoroughly explained. I give information about every single candidate. I link to sources. Like it's a journalistic document.
It is, yeah.
It explains like who these people are, what their views are, and it gives you enough information for you to be able to say, well, look, it gives you space to disagree with my choices and still be able to vote using the guide, even if you don't want to vote for the person that I'm suggesting that you vote for.
Yeah. No, it's really just a work of art. It's amazing. I can't get over how amazing it is that you can be so detailed and so hilarious all at the same time. Like I don't, like, again, it's just like, are you a superhuman? Like, how does your brain do that? Like, how do you? And I remember talking to you one night and you were like, I have to write the guide. And you just like wrote so much of it in one night. And I'm like, I can't even read 10 pages of a book without like spacing out. Like, how are you sitting here combing through?
It's I've got it down to a process now. I think the 2020 general election guide, I wrote it all in one day.
Wow.
I just sat down at my computer at like 9 a.m. and like had a sandwich and just wrote the whole thing in one day.
That's incredible.
And you know, general election guides in Cook County are much easier to write than everything else because there's like 2 candidates and there's not a lot of races because so many places, like for so many seats, people run unopposed because it's Cook County and Republicans don't even bother to run for half the stuff. But the humor aspect is really, I think, you know, I love the fact that it's a living document and it's informative. But I think what keeps people coming back to it is the fact that I'm really mean to politicians. And I'm mean in a funny way where like I'm throwing shade at politicians on paper, and people really like, politics isn't funny. You know, and politicians and like talking heads work really, really hard to take all of the joy and all of the like positive energy out of political discourse, where it's, you know, it's a person in a suit yelling at another person in a suit about things that like matter as to whether you or I live or die. And that's like what political discourse is in this country. But when you talk about what actual like when real people talk about politics, like we curse, we call people crusty motherfuckers, like we're mean, salty, pissed off, cockroach ass bitches.
Yeah.
And that's what the guide really tries to take, is the political language of people talking to each other on the streets about their elected officials, and take that humor and take that sass and take that anger and combine it with facts and information and resources, and turn that into a guide where, you know, people can know that I think Lori Lightfoot is a horrid police goblin, and like that, you know, some alderman or another is like, you know, the equivalent of a human gym sock, and like and stuff like that. And I think that's really useful for people because there's this air of importance around politicians and around people in power. And you take that away when you mock them. And you take that away when you mock them in like a really, like in a mean personal way, where you have the ability to say like, look, fuck you, you like nasty Kevin from The Office looking motherfucker.
Oh, I love Kevin.
I love Kevin too, but like, you know, there was a dude who ran for Congress, I think in the primaries in 2020, and he just, you know, he looked like Kevin from The Office was running for office, and his politics weren't any good either. And that's what that's what I said about him, and that was it, because he wasn't worth saying anything else about. And there's a lot of power in being able to go up to people who are making life or death decisions on your behalf and be able to laugh in their face about how awful they are as a person, and like take that power and take that importance away from them.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to talk just a little bit, like you were saying, Republicans don't even bother to run in Illinois, although we do see some of them running for like state's attorney in the more fascist parts of the government that are just
And they just run as
automatically like
Democrats now.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my point. I want to talk a little bit about this whole Trump and post-Trump situation where we can't talk poorly about Democrats because what do we if we get another Trump? But the Democrats are literally like 1990s Republicans at this point.
Yes.
And so I want to talk a little bit about what it's like, first of all, in a city and in a state with such cutthroat machine politics where sure, it's all Democrats. And so that means nothing because it's all Democrats.
Right.
And we saw Lori Lightfoot be able to win on a totally false progressive platform that we knew she wasn't going to follow through on. But folks are so used to hearing progressive talking points that the fact she was a Black lesbian gave her a leg up as far as like, oh, she's the best because of her identity. So can we talk a little bit about what it's like? And I think it was a little bit of it's been a little bit of a thing to talk to and reconnect with family members who don't live in Chicago after me being involved in the politics there for like 8 years and being like, I don't give a fuck if you're a Democrat or not. Are you trying to kill my people? Yes, I'm going to call you on that. Rahm Emanuel, the devil. You know what I mean? I don't care that he's part of the. And so anyway, can we just talk a little bit about how you're thinking and feeling about this fear of criticizing Democrats, post-Trump for fear that he's going to come back versus what we're seeing now, which is the Democratic administration, the Biden administration, already going back on their promise of 2000, and not to get into like the details, but this is just a very obvious lie right up front of like, you're gonna lose if you don't do the bare minimum that you like we can do math, you know what I mean?
Right.
And how do we kind of talk to folks who are afraid of talking shit about the Democrats and can convince them that it's okay to be honest about the fact that they are passing bills that are going to kill us and we need to name that?
I think there's two ways really to approach that conversation, right? Is there's the people who are going to never change because we live in a hyper partisan, hyper polarized environment where you're on a team and you're loyal to that team and you don't change. And so there are always going to be people who will never criticize. I mean, they'll scream about Trump until they're red in the face, and then when Biden does the same thing, they're fine with it, and that's how it's always going to be for them, because that's just that's the hypocrisy of partisan politics. Is it matters what letter is after your name, not what your actual policies are. They just want their team to win, and it doesn't actually matter what that team is doing. I mean, I think Kirsten Sinema is a really good example of this. Like just a Karen, a complete Karen, a bisexual shame. And like her like hashtag girl boss thumbs down on a $15 minimum wage.
Repulsive. Like I watched that and I was like, how am I hope this woman suffers.
I mean, she's worse than Joe Manchin. She's worse than Joe Manchin politically. And and the things that she's not worse than Joe Manchin on are because she's like a cisgender woman. And so she's like, I think Joe Manchin's pro-life and she's not pro-life. And that's it. That's the only difference. And I think, it's, you have to point out that the team that you're on doesn't mean anything. And I think in Chicago, that's really helpful actually now that all of our municipal elections are nonpartisan, because you're able to say, well, look, this person's a crusty motherfucker, or like this person loves cops, and they're not going to be able to hide behind being a Democrat, because Republicans run it as Democrats all the time. I mean, like there are members of the Chicago City Council of the city council who are fascists and Republicans and like vote in Republican elections and like openly support Donald Trump and like get their constituents to vote Republican, and they're the Democratic committee person for their ward. And it's just like, I think the important thing is you have to be able to focus on what is the impact of this person's decisions. Like, is it important to have a Democrat instead of a Republican? Yes, because there's only so far right that a Democrat can go. And also we have to point out that as far right as a Democrat can go is where a lot of Democrats end up. And that far right, I mean, is there a material difference between a 1990s Republican and a contemporary Republican? Yes, there is. And also, at the end of the day, are they still going to kill people? Yes, they are. And politicians that make it their job to kill people because they have shitty beliefs are not people who should have any sort of power.
Yeah. So I'm hoping, and again, it's one of those situations. I wish that Lori didn't win and that we didn't have to say "I told you so."
Hmm.
I wish that Biden and his whole administration would do what they said they would do, because I want people to live and I want things to be materially better. And
Right.
also, I think part of what we're trying to focus with Shred is to be just to be invitational. That's the goal, is to say, if you're suddenly realizing that these two sides are accountable to the same wealthy people and don't actually care about you and can't because of how they get their money,
Hmm.
if you're suddenly realizing that and it's suddenly really bothering you, let's talk about it. Not like,
Yeah.
where have you been, what's wrong with you, we've been saying this.
Right.
But it is time to listen to people who have been saying it. So it's not time for you to come in and be like, well, I guess I'll give you a shot, convince me. It's like, is it working for you or not? Let's be engaged together
Hmm.
respectfully, because we have been, screaming and crying and marching and fighting for our lives. And suddenly this summer, again, I wish the pandemic hadn't happened. I wish George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were still with us. And there was a moment where it suddenly became profitable to start to talk about this. So how are we going to differentiate between these corporate virtue signals versus what's actually going to help
Yeah.
us, which is never going to be a corporation. It's never going to be a corporate Democrat. And what does that mean for how we think about big elections, local elections, and how we're going to start to actually differentiate between what it means to be a Democrat and what it means to actually be for the people?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is people in power, unless they are directly from and accountable to a community, and even sometimes then, people in power are liars, and they will lie and they will cheat and they will steal every single time, and they will say whatever they have to say to get people to let them maintain their power, and they will go right back to the way that things always were at the snap of a finger because they can.
Mm-hmm.
And that because they're liars and they know that they can get away with it, and so they do. I mean, Lori Lightfoot, if she doesn't even run again for a second term as mayor, she got to be mayor of Chicago during a pandemic and a global anti-racist uprising, and she got to do real tangible damage that this city will be dealing with for decades because she lied and cheated and stole and wound up as mayor.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot about what it means to see what it means to actually build real accountability for elected officials, because I, like you're saying at the beginning, this is one tool in our tool belt and it's not
Mhm.
something I'm willing to leave on the table. And also, if I were to run for office, I wouldn't want to have to hold office for 20 years. I kind of want to, I'm dreaming of a system where we're so accountable to each other that we can cycle through and say, I'm going to hold this office for 4 years, then you're going to tap in, then you're going to tap in. And we don't have to be career politicians, because that sucks. And also it's corrupting.
That
And it's,
sounds so much like anarchism. Oh my
oh,
god.
really?
Yes.
Explain.
Well, I mean, like, I'm sure everybody who's seen like Monty Python and the Holy Grail remembers the anarcho-syndicalist peasant sketch where they each take turns being the executive officer for 2 weeks.
Right.
Uh, and it's like, as ridiculous and funny as that is, that's kind of, anarchism is about believing in the power and the ability of people to govern ourselves,
Mhm.
independent of a centralized state power or a government full of powerful people, whether those people are from the ruling class or whether that's a dictatorship of the proletariat. The end belief there is that state structures and the systems of power will always wind up being used against some sort of minority and some
Mhm.
sort of oppressed group. And so we can't maintain those systems, we can't trust them, and we can't use them to our advantage because they weren't created for us.
Mhm.
And to try and use the state and the system of government or any system of power to liberate people that's just not how it works. I mean, like, what we need is we need revolutionary solidarity and uprising among the people, and then we have to form intentional communities of people who are accountable to each other, whether that's you go off and you live in the woods with 5 friends, or that's a really comprehensive and deeply intra-community effort to govern a city like Chicago. I mean,
Mhm.
I really believe that the people of Chicago are capable of figuring out their own problems and capable of governing ourselves. I mean, would we have to elect like biweekly representatives? Would we wind up with something like a city council and something like a mayor? Maybe, but it wouldn't be, there's not a party that's going to appoint like a general secretary or a
Mhm.
mayor. There's not like, there's not people running for office because of a dogmatic centralized belief system fed to them by a party. It's people doing what they need to do to live their lives. And sometimes the work of government means you let somebody be in charge for 2 weeks, but you also have to keep, there's not the money, and there's not the tools and the weapons and the police and prisons to allow people who hold representative roles to use them to oppress. And
I really appreciate, oh, go ahead.
I think that's really that's one of the problems with the state that we currently have, is the people in power have access to too much power and there's no accountability for them. I mean, we get to kick them out, once every 2 years? 2 years is a long fucking time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate that definition. And I think something that we're working with in Shred is trying to deal with this age-old and also currently kind of revamping kind of conversation around can socialists and anarchists work together? And I don't like to call myself any-ist. I subscribe to various ideologies to try to triangulate where I'm at and what I'm trying to do. But I do see, we're just trying to here at Shred say exactly what your work is, what's the transition? Because I do want to get to that place, and also I want my shit back, and I'm not going to walk away from the crap. My enslaved ancestors built this country. My grandfather worked in a steel mill, and my family suffered from that. I'm not going to say fuck the state, you can keep all your resources and medical technology. No, it's mine. And so that's why for me it seems like there's this transitional situation or something. To me, I really am not interested in imagining a world where we start over. I view it as an ongoing process. And a quote that I say, I'm going to probably say every episode, David Harvey, I am a Marxist so that someday we can live as anarchists, basically saying that a Marxist framing allows us to understand our position in the economy, figure out where our power is and how to take our power back, get our resources back. And in that effort, we build solidarity, we figure things out, we teach each other, we begin to understand what it is to live collectively. And we do for me, I'm also coming from a mental health and an emotional perspective of, we do the healing to know how to treat each other well and to not rely on abuse that frankly does arise whenever we don't have structure. Sometimes it's just not a clout of state power, it's a clout of personal power and abuse. And so I'm really excited to hear that definition, and I hope we can be in more communication about that going forward. But for now, for the sake of time, I'd just like to hear, what's something that's been really surprising about doing this kind of work for you?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think the thing that's still weirdest to me is when people who run for office just call me, and it's so weird. I mean, every single cycle, when there's some candidate for some office that just cold calls me. I have no idea how the hell they got my number, but they just cold call me and they leave a 3-minute voicemail sort of sniveling about why I should pay attention to them. And sometimes it's somebody really cool that I was planning on paying attention to anyway. And I'm like, oh, neat, you're great, I'm going to give you a call back. And sometimes it's just some uninteresting chode who wanted me to endorse them. And I mean, hey, don't call me, bro. How'd you get my number, bro?
Boundaries.
I write a voter guide. I give out my email in public. Email me. Don't call me.
Yeah,
but I think the flip side of that is, it's the amount of access that I have to people who are trying to be in positions of power is crazy. I got congressional candidates to add pages to their website in March of last year, just because I said they should. I was able to write something on the internet and say your position on this issue wasn't clear enough for me, so I can't endorse you. And they updated their website. I mean, I got a congressional candidate to come out in support of Palestinian liberation in public on their congressional website, because I said they belonged to an organization that was a 2-state organization, and they wanted to clarify their stance. And so I changed my endorsement because of that. And I thought it was really cool that, just me writing something on the internet got somebody to take a pro-Palestine stance in public in an election.
Amazing. Look at the power.
and that's, it blows me away, because the power, it's weird having that sort of influence. And I always am really intentional about talking about this every time I talk about the voter guide. Is the only reason I have any sort of influence whatsoever, and like the only reason the voter guide means anything at all, is because people continue to read it.
Mm-hmm.
And because people, trust me and trust my research and trust my politics, and folks use the guide and they share it and they say, this is something that I believe in. And so it's allowing me to take that community trust and that those community politics and all the work that I've done with the wonderful people that I know and the communities that we're all accountable to. And it lets me take that to folks who are running for office and say, look, these people aren't going to fucking vote for you if you do X, Y, or Z things. Oh, how do I know? Because hundreds of thousands of people read my guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And see, that's the thing, is that the power of accessibility, it just goes back to people power versus money power, or power. It's like, well, there's more of us than there are of you. And I have a whole bunch of people who normally tap out really paying attention. So you need to consider this, because we will outpower you. And it's just amazing to see, really, since you've only been doing this for, at this point, like, 3, almost 4 years. And it's like, that is incredible. I don't know if you want to keep doing it. I'm sure it's a lot of work, but
there will be a voter guide until I say there won't be. And
okay.
The plan right now is I will write a guide for every election in Chicago until I decide that it's no longer a useful resource, or until people stop reading them.
Okay. I don't imagine people will stop reading them anytime
soon. Well, then I'll keep writing them.
Oh, what a blessing. All right, let's talk just a little bit before we go about comedy. So, so you are not necessarily, like, when you think of like a stand-up comedian, you're like, this is a person who's identified as a stand-up comedian. They might go to open mics. It's their whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You are, that is not you.
No, that's not.
So how did you come to occasionally telling jokes on stage, and what does it feel like for you? Does it feel natural or weird?
I mean, I think, like, again, it's a cultural thing for me, because like I come from a long line of like Jewish lesbian stand-up comedians, not like in my family, because my family isn't cool enough for that, but like, in the general Jewish, like in the cabal that controls the world, there are a lot of our Jewish World Control Committee on comedy has a lot of lesbians on it. So so I'm in that legacy. And also I think a lot of it was from the voter guide, because people kept inviting me to speak on panels or like speak at events. And I wound up just being funny in my speaking engagements. And like, I generally like to think that I'm a funny person. And then people started asking me like, oh, would you do comedy? Would you do comedy? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Like, I'll go up and stand and talk in front of people and crack jokes for 5 minutes instead of cracking like 10 jokes over a 50-minute period. I'll just like tell 20 jokes over a 5-minute period. And I did it a couple times and it was really fun. And I think I would love to keep doing it. And I think my goal is to be good enough at comedy to keep getting invited to do comedy bits at events that I like, but not so good that I start making money off of it, because then I would be a stand-up comedian and I'd have to buy a bunch of like condom beanies.
Oh no, that would ruin your whole aesthetic.
It really would. Like, I'd have to buy a bunch of condom beanies and like start cuffing my jeans, and I'm not really sure if I'm ready for that.
Oh no, the world isn't ready for that either, please.
No.
Well, we're so thrilled to have you with Free Jazz Date Night next Friday, the 19th. We're going to have you right at the front. And then actually, I think Eli might be interviewing everybody. I don't know if he's going to interview the comedians or just the musicians. But either way,
let me know.
Yeah, we're really hoping, again, with Shred, to find folks who are not like entrenched in their art form and experts, but rather to say like, here's this person who actually does this whole other thing, but we're going to have them do this thing too, because it's really fun. And so again, like, our tagline is science, culture, politics. These are all one thing. They're all interconnected. Obviously you are heavily into politics,
yes.
Heavily into culture. I'm not sure how you feel about like science necessarily, although
science is great.
It's cool. Yeah. And so just talking a lot about like, like decommodifying the concept of entertainment, taking away the concept of like a performer as a commodity, and instead saying, this is a community activity. It's something I do anyway. If you like it, I'd like to do it for you. Let's laugh together. Let's share space, but I'm not trying to commodify this. So I really love that approach, and I appreciate it. The other comedian that's going to be sharing the bill with you is Odanaka, who is a stand-up person.
Amazing.
You know, was in the Netflix series Easy as a cab
Wow.
driver, and like does a lot of stand up. Also has a science background and is an amazing astrologer. Amazing astrologer.
That's
So if
really
you want your
gay.
chart done, yeah, it's really gay, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know if Odenak is gay or not, but you never know.
they are
Um,
now.
yeah, they're gay by association. So just again going back to like, you know, there just that the idea that we are complex
Hmm.
processes, and the stand-up comedian part of you is a newly formed part of the process that you are, and also it's not going to go down this predetermined path of commodification and replication. It's going to continue to be part of your beautiful full self, and we are so thrilled to have that with us next Friday the 19th. So folks, tune in. I'd like to know just a little bit before we go, what are some of your hopes and dreams that you have for your work and your life and your community?
Oh gosh. I mean, I hope, for my community, I think my hopes are like complicated but simple. I think, I want to live in a world in which Black people and queer people and trans people and Jews can be free and liberated, in which Palestinians can be free and liberated, in which Jews can claim Judaism back from Zionism, and like, hopefully stamp it out as a poison of an ideology. And that we can dismantle capitalism and white supremacy and the state and imperialism and apartheid, and just live as we were supposed to live in community, taking care of each other and loving each other, and basking in the abundance of the world that there is for us. um, and I think, for my work, I want to keep doing what I'm doing, in the aim of furthering all those goals. um, I hope people continue to read the voter guide. I hope, the readership continues to grow so it can help more progressive and radical people get elected. I hope, I'm really confident that Brave Space is going to continue doing well. And I hope that the platform that I wind up having as, as a queer and trans Jew, allows me to speak truth to power in my own community as well, because there's a lot of fucked up shit going on in the Jewish community that people are really afraid to talk about.
Mhm.
And I'm going to keep talking about it anyway because people need to keep doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what are you doing to take care of yourself and preserve your beautiful energy these days?
Oh gosh. Well, one of the reasons the pandemic was so good to me is because I have great, like, grumpy old crone energy. Like, eat sandwiches, chew gum, watch TV.
um,
Like, chew gum, watch TV, get in bed by 10. Like, wonderful, wonderful energy. But I think, what I'm helping the people that I love take care of themselves and like receiving that care in return. I am eating really great food and spending time with beautiful people that I love, and, trying to build the life that I want for myself, with the people that I want in it. And I think, my partners and my friends and, and you and all the people that I work with are amazing parts of that. And that's enough care for me, is the community that I have, that I love, that loves me right back.
yeah. Oh, we want it in the future and we want it right now. It's
Mhm.
beautiful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Steph. It's been amazing to have you. Folks listening, thank you so, so very much. We do hope you'll join us to celebrate, to party, to learn, to laugh all next week, starting exactly a week from tonight. We're going to launch
Mhm.
with a dance party, 3 hours of dancing. Come and move with us. Breathe, chat, whatever you want to do, just hang out. We've got, all kinds of stuff. We'll be posting on all of our social, the full schedule, the full lineup, but especially don't forget to tune in Friday night, the 19th, to hear Stephanie be hilarious. Here's some free jazz. Here's some fun interviews. Um, Please give us a follow on Facebook. If you're here on Instagram, follow us here. Twitter, YouTube. If you follow us and give us a subscribe on YouTube, we can have our very own unique URL, and then we can be a
Ooh.
real boy. So you should go ahead. We have 3 subscribers right now. So will you be the fourth? 4 is my favorite number.
Ooh.
Um, keep an eye out for announcements. And don't forget, we have a bonus episode of Shred Radio tomorrow at 2 Central, 3 Eastern with Sean Estelle, who holds down our Read with Shred series. An amazing organizer and human. I cannot wait to talk to them. They are hosting a panel on Wednesday next week. If you love us and you want to help us sustain our work, pay our folks, You can become a patron at patreon.com/shredmagazine. Lots of really fun presents for you. We've got patches, buttons. I will make you some custom jewelry. You can see Steph is modeling my work if you're into it. $10 a month will get you some really cool copper jewelry. And we just want to, we have to run our website. We have to pay our folks. We would like to keep doing this work without going hungry. So if you feel like throwing us just a little bit of money, that would be much appreciated. And yeah, invite all your friends to our events. If you think one of them looks fun, invite your mom, invite your uncle, invite whoever you want. We love you so much. Steph, any last words?
I guess just thank you, Ruby, for all the work that you're doing and for helping create this wonderful space. Thank you for having me on to talk some shit with you. And thank you for everybody who showed up to watch and listen.
Much love, everybody. Thank you so much. Love you, Steph. And we're going to cut the stream and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.